In tonight's Dateline Defense, changes in the Middle East. Russia is looking to build influence in the region, and they're cozying up to Egypt. This could rekindle a friendship that began during the Cold War. What does it mean for the U.S.? Joining me tonight for answers on Capitol Insider is Col Cedric Leighton, retired military intelligence officer and president of Cedric Leighton Associates. Cedric, in October, the U.S. announced it would drastically reduce aid to Egypt. Did this lack of funding cause them to turn to Russia?
Morris, absolutely it did. The Egyptian economy and the Egyptian government are totally dependent on foreign aid. And one of the biggest things that has happened is once the U.S. declared its unwillingness to provide more aid to the Egyptian government and especially the Egyptian military, the Egyptians decided they needed to look somewhere else. And the easiest place for them to look was Russia. And that's exactly what they ended up doing.
You just returned from the Middle East. It's good to have you back. Analysts say the relationship between Russia and Egypt is growing. How does this impact U.S. influence in the region?
Well, I think what's going to happen here is that the U.S. is going to find it increasingly difficult to not only influence events politically, but also to sell weapons. Any U.S. company, any of the major defense contractors that are currently working in the Middle East are going to find it very difficult to compete not only with the Russians, but also with the French and with other suppliers of arms like the British. And that's going to be a significant impact when it comes to our relationship with the Arab nations in the Middle East. And it could very much dampen prospects for the resolution of conflicts such as the Syrian civil war, as well as the Israeli-Palestinian issue.
Cedric, what kind of influence does Russia stand to gain from this relationship? Because Putin is also using his charm on other countries as well.
Yes, he is. He definitely believes that he is going to be able to supplant the United States in many ways. He's already working very hard in Syria. He is basically, besides Iran, the only ally that the Assad regime has right now. And he's using that to leverage the UN's response to the chemical weapons attacks in Syria. He's also using it to gain time to protect Russian interests, such as the base that's existing in Syria, and it also allows him to gain leverage over Arab countries. Once he has leverage over Arab countries, he is basically going to, at least he believes, have the same kind of influence that his Soviet predecessors had, and that is exactly the goal that he has.
Call me crazy, but I think the history books are going to show Vladimir Putin as a premier world leader.
Oh, I think he absolutely is. When you look at it from a Machiavellian sense,
you bet.
Putin is right there at the very top. There's no question about it.
Now let's move on to Iran. Nuclear negotiations between the country and world leaders have slowed. Earlier this week, the U.S. blamed Iran for the breakdown, but reports indicate France was the culprit. Why are the French taking a hard line against Iran?
Well, the French have several reasons for doing that. First of all, they've studied the Iranian nuclear situation quite thoroughly. Their companies were among the first, along with German companies, to provide nuclear technology to the Iranians under the Shah's regime back in the 1970s. They know what the Iranians have. They also know what the Iranians can do because they've kept a lot of tabs on what the Iranian community is doing, both the exile community as well as Tehran and the government in Tehran. So they know the area quite well. They also know the risks involved. They understand that if the Iranians get a nuclear weapon and are able to deploy that nuclear weapon, they risk destabilizing the entire Middle East. And that risks destroying some of the major relationships the French have with some of the big oil producers in the Persian Gulf. And that's really what they're worried about. They're worried about the economic lifeline to France and to Europe.
You think a deal is likely anytime soon, Cedric?
Well, I think there is a deal that's possible. However, the Iranians are not necessarily the most open when it comes to negotiations, and it's also very clear that the Iranians may be playing for time. There's talk of 6-month limits in these areas, and those 6-month limits really mean nothing because all it takes is just a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, and a little bit of real scientific breakthroughs to go ahead and actually destroy some of the peace efforts that are going on right now. And when that happens, all of these talks would be for naught. But it is possible that a deal is in the offing. It is more probable than it has been in the recent past.
Welcome back from your fact-finding trip, Col Cedric Leighton, president of Cedric Leighton Associates. We'll see you next time, Cedric. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Morris. Thank you.